Welcome, this is ArtFX and you're watching another sound design tutorial for BassGorilla.com. Today we're going to be looking into how to create a good big riser, and we're going to be using Serum for this. I love Serum, and Serum is great for making risers. So what is a riser? Well, a riser is a sound that you put usually in the build-up of a track that rises in pitch or in volume, or that basically it changes over time and it creates tension. And usually you put this in the build-up before the drop to really build up the tension and, well, make your way towards the epic drop or the heavy drop or whatever you're gonna make. Now, I make mostly neurofunk drum and bass, so I work at a tempo of 172 beats per minute, and I like to create rises for my tracks a lot. Now, today I want to show you just a little bit about that and how I make my rises. So let's go in here and let's just grab our instrument of choice, which is Serum, and let's start making a riser. So while this is loading up, I'm going to be making a riser of about, I think, 16 bars. That's gonna be good enough. So let's create a new MIDI clip, and in this MIDI clip I'm going to create a F note. Now let's just do an F2. Let's just create that F note, and I'm going to stop the note 2 beats before the end of these 16 bars. Now I do that because usually when you are using a build-up in a track, you usually end the build-up a little bit before the drop, and you just put like a little sound effect or a vocal somewhere, something like that, in that little gap to break it up a bit and kind of like throw the listener off a little bit and just do something unexpected, and that will make it much easier to go to transition into the next section of a track. Now when we go into Serum, there are a lot of ways we can create a riser, and the most simple way would probably be to rise in pitch. So what we can do is we can go in here, and this is your pitch bend range. So we have 2 values. The top one is gonna be for going up in pitch, and the bottom one is gonna be for going down in pitch. So let's set the range to 12 semitones. Which is a full octave, and let's create a little bit of a pitch bend in this clip. So I'm going to select the entire range, and now I'm going to drag up so we can do that, and then I'm gonna click this first point at the top, which is going to create an upwards ramp shape. I'm also gonna do a little bit of a line like that so we don't get a click at the end, because we have, like, if we have it like what we had before, like this, because this is a straight line down, we might get a click because it's just instantly going from this maximum top value to 0, which might create a click. So I'll just create a little point and make that fade out. Now by doing just that, we've already created a really basic riser. As you can hear, it just rises in pitch. Now, I might want to do a bigger pitch rise, and we can do that now by maybe setting this one to be all the way down, so it's all the way at the bottom. Now, one thing that I like to do, and if we zoom in here, we can see this line which resembles the start of the 9th bar, and that is pretty much at exactly the middle point in our riser. And you can see, because we have a 2 octave range now, and because we're ending slightly before the end of the whole MIDI clip, our middle point here is slightly off axis, as you can see. So what I like to do is zoom in a bit, create a dot here, and move it down so that it sits pretty much at the 0 point. And that is going to mean that this first half section here is exactly a 1 octave rise in pitch, and then this section from here to here is again an octave rise, and right in the middle it's going to be perfectly in pitch. I find that works really well. You can also do it by getting rid of that point, zooming in a bit, and just holding Alt on your keyboard and then hovering slightly above or below this line so it turns blue, and then just click and drag, which is going to bend the line, and we can bend it to the 0 point as we have right now. Then we can zoom out and you can see it's a slightly curved line. It's almost not, you're almost not able to see it. It almost looks like a linear line, but it's fine, and that makes it, at least here at the start of the ninth bar, it's now in key for just a little moment. And I think that's a little detail that works to make your rises a little bit better. Now for Serum, here we can do a lot of interesting stuff. We are currently working with a saw wave, and let's just try something else. I'm gonna go for this one. Now I like this, where you can see the little bit of the saw wave with a slight, I don't know, it has a slight curve in it, a slight weird glitchy looking part that moves up and down. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set an LFO to that. Now that creates some movement, which is really subtle, by the way, but it's a really nice movement to have. I'm also gonna set up a macro control, and this macro control is going to give us more tension. That's what we want. We want to create a macro that allows us to create more tension. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna assign this macro knob to a whole lot of different things. That means that when we automate this knob, it's gonna change all these different parameters at the same time, and therefore it's going to give us increased amount of tension, especially in combination with the pitch rise that we've already created. So what we're gonna do is I'm going to assign this macro knob to the speed of this LFO. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to uncheck this box that says BPM, which means right now we're working in a free running LFO, which is set to a particular hertz value. We can start the movement pretty quick, and this movement is not really that easy to be heard. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to assign the same LFO to the level of this oscillator so we're able to hear it. It's already doing some pretty interesting stuff, but let's assign our LFO to that, and I want to check how slow the LFO is getting, so I'm gonna bring this up all the way, and now we can hear how slow it actually is. So I'm gonna make it pretty slow. Now let's go into here and let's go into the automation mode, and I've moved this knob so now that is selected, and I'm going to create an automation for that same length of the MIDI that we have for the MIDI note. And let's just drop a little point there again so we don't get a click. And now let's just check how this sounds. Okay, so the first thing that I don't like is the start, and we can fix that by just moving this down a little bit, and then we're going to change the range again so that it's, well, not going all the way down. I still don't like what it's doing, so I'm going to bring it quite far down. Now, I like the sound, but I think that it slows down a little bit too quick. So what we can do is we can go into the modulation matrix, and right here we can see macro number 1 is being modulated by modulating the LFO 1 rate. And you can see this little box here that says curve. what happens when I drag this down? It's going to alter the curve of, basically it's going to change the curve of this macro knob for just this particular lane that we have. So by bringing this down, you can now see this dot. When you look at this blue dot right here, that's where you can really see it. It starts off moving slow, and the further this knob goes up, the faster it's actually going to go down. Just look at that little blue thing. So I like the sound of that. I am going to change the rate ever so slightly. I think it starts a little bit too fast, and I'm going to change this range again as well. So we're really narrowing down the range that we want. Now, I like that movement that we get on the volume towards the end, but I don't want to have it at the start. I think that's a little bit too much. So since we have this macro knob, I think we can, it's set to the volume. So if we go here to the auxiliary source and select macro 1, I think we can actually control that now. So it now slowly comes up. There's one more thing that I want to do, so I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna do that, and I'm going to move this up all the way and then move it down. So it starts at full volume, and that might be a little bit too loud, so I'm gonna bring it down a bit. So that's good. We do hear that it doesn't end at the right part. I think we should change this bend value a little bit. Let's bring it down a little bit more. That's better. That's much better. Now we can really start playing around with this. So let's just add a bunch of voices. Let's do 4 voices, and I'm not gonna change that. See, that already makes a much thicker sound. And let's turn on oscillator B. Let's turn the level all the way down and just use this for FM maybe. That could be cool. Let's go for maybe one of the digital waveforms. Let's try Reese. And let's FM from B on this one. I'm gonna restart, set the random phase restart all the way to 0, so that it starts at the same position every time. And I might do that for the other one as well. And we can blend this back in. Now what I think would be cool, if we put the macro knob on this one, so it starts without this oscillator so that you don't hear it, it's only just FMing this one, and it's slowly coming up. Now, I think we should add a bunch of voices to this one, and I'm gonna go into the global tab and I'm gonna hit set the mode of the of oscillator beat to super, and let's just do the same thing for the first one as well. I find super sounds a little bit better for doing these kind of things, especially when you use multiple voices. You can add a little bit more detuning when it's set to the super without it sounding bad, and I think that's a good thing to do. So the next thing we could maybe play with the stack function. So that creates another octave on top of that oscillator, and I think that sounds pretty nice. Maybe we can try playing around with one of the bend modes to see what that does. And we can assign our LFO to that as well if we want. And maybe try out asymmetrical. And I think it will be cool if we make the detuning bigger towards the end. So I'm gonna do pretty large range on the detuning with the macro number 1, and I'm gonna do the same thing as we did earlier. I'm gonna bend this down a bit so that it's not really coming in immediately from the start. It just takes a little and then it speeds up and comes in faster and faster and just goes up faster and faster on the detuning, which makes the sound wider. So let's just see how that sounds. Now, there's a couple of more things we can do. We can add a little bit of noise. Let's go in here. Let's use the high passed one. I think that's a good noise oscillator to use. And we're gonna add our macro knob to that so that it slowly comes up. And I think it would be good if we assign our LFO to it as well. So that sounds nice. Now note, we are still not using any filters or any effects. This is just two oscillators and a noise oscillator. Now let's go into the filter. I'm going to assign all of these oscillators to the filter so they are all running through the same filter. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to try out one of these ones that we have here. So let's try out one of the comb filters and see what that's going to do. I'm going to bring the resonance up so it's really going to affect the sound. And we have this as well, which is the high pass of the... is it the high pass? No, it's more like a low pass or a high pass at once, maybe. Let's see. Yeah, it's a high and low pass at once, so it's really affecting a mid-range frequencies. Let's see how that sounds. Now I think we could actually do something cool with that. I'm gonna assign the macro to this cutoff position. Now that's a really nice sound, so what I'm gonna do, I'm going to assign the macro number 1 to this as well. That's really nice. Now I'm going to bring the resonance down, and I'm going to assign the macro knob to the resonance as well, so it's going to start off a little bit cleaner. And we can bring the mix down and assign the macro knob to the mix as well. So it's really starting off clean, and then that comb filter effect is going to come in towards the end of the riser. Next up, let's go into the effects section and let's add a few effects to this. Let's try the hyper dimension, which is going to make the sound a lot wider. You can play with the detuning if you want. And let's maybe add a little bit of distortion. We can maybe do just soft clipping maybe. Flanger and phaser, maybe. Sometimes these can do some pretty cool stuff. I do like to sync them to the BPM though. I think I'm gonna add a chorus. I like to have the chorus in the high frequencies. So this is now a high pass filter. And let's add a compressor to it to really bring out the sound. So let's boost this a little bit. Next up, we can do a few more things. I think it's always nice to add a little bit of reverb to your risers. So we have a little bit of reverb. And I'm also going to add a final filter. And this one I'm going to assign a high pass filter. Now let's do a high pass 12. And I'm going to assign that macro knob that we had to the high pass filter. And I'm not going to bring it up all the way, so I want to have it up, well, quite high, but not all the way. And I'm going to go into the matrix again, and then we're going to do that bend curve again that we had earlier. Let's see how that sounds. So there you have it. That's a pretty interesting riser, and we now have only that single knob that controls it, which is really great. And the best part about it is we can turn this instantly into a more, how you say it, a downwards kind of, a down sweep, or however they want to call it. And you do that by making the range go down. And we might want to bend it down a little bit further, and now we get something like this. So there you have it. This was ArtFX for BassGorilla, and I'll see you in the next video.